in the spirit of vulnerability and transparency and what we're seeking to foster here. And the fact that we are a family and we've got nothing to hide, right? What were some of the broken cisterns that you were able to identify? Maybe we could just start calling some of those out. What were the broken cisterns that you were able to identify in your life?
Seeking the praise of man.
Seeking the praise of man.
Comfort.
Comfort.
Security.
Security. Work, career, yep. Stuff, yeah, stuff, for sure. Vacation. Good works. Control, yep, that's a big one. Self-sufficiency, yep. And so here, sorry? Acceptance, yep, that's right. So here's what I hope we can see, okay? If we think back to that iceberg illustration, the things behaviorally at the top of the iceberg, we might look very different in that sense and on a lot of different levels. But when we get below the surface, we're all the same. We're all the same. We all struggle with the same things, and here's why. Because we all have a sinful flesh. We all have a sinful flesh that seeks self-exaltation. We all have a sinful flesh that seeks indulgence of every kind. And so we all struggle in the same way. So let's move on to session 2, part 2, where we are going to get even a little bit more interactive with these workbooks and understanding this, the connection between desire, emotion, and behavior. We want to have a look at this, the connection between desire, emotions, and behavior. And so let's jump right into our first exercise in this section, which is this. You should have a sheet in your workbook that says desires, emotions, and behavior. And there should be 3 columns. Here's what I'd like you to do. Let's go to the far left column, and you should see a title there that says desires. And then under desires, there are some words. It says esteem, love, approval, respect, comfort, ease, pleasure, control, safety. Wow, that sounds familiar. That's pretty much the list that we just went through, isn't it? Okay, so here's what I want you to do. First of all, let's be brutally honest. Okay? Brutally honest. And I'm going to read these words again, and here's what I want you to do. I want you to think to yourself, do I probably want that too much? As I consider my life, do I want that, in fact, way too much? So as I read these, I'd like you to circle all of the ones that you would say, you know what, truth be told, I want that way too much. Okay, ready? Here we go. Esteem, the esteem of others, to be esteemed. Love, to be loved by people. Approval, to get the praise of others. And maybe thinking, well, how is that different from esteem? Well, it's kind of not, but language is a funny thing, and sometimes certain words mean different things. And so approval, the praise of man. Respect, to be respected by family, respected by coworkers. Comfort, the comforts that we find in the world. Ease, I just want life to be easy. I just want easy. Why can't it be easy? Pleasure, the pleasures of the world. Control. I just want to be able to manipulate and influence and control. And then the last one, safety. Safety. I just want to be safe. Okay, so there's maybe some of us that circled a couple of those things. There's some of us that have circled all of those things. And that's kind of normal, all right? So here's the next thing. So put yourself in the place where those things that you circled, okay, all those things that you circled, put yourself in the place where you are wanting those things like 10 out of 10. That you intensely want those things, but then you can't have them. You want those things, but you can't have them. What emotions do you experience in the middle column? I'm going to read them out and we can circle them as you go. You want this 10 out of 10. You can't get it. What kind of emotions do you experience? Here's the first one. I just want out of here. Escape. Anger. self-pity, feel sorry for myself. I'm just frustrated, just tense. Bitterness. I should have that thing, but I can't. Sadness, I just feel low. Hopelessness. I'm never going to get that thing. And jealousy. I wish I had that thing like others do. So here's the next step. I want you to look at all of the words that you circled under emotions, and I want you to place yourself where those are literally tidal waves, that you're getting hit with all the tidal waves of those emotions, or like 10 out of 10 emotions. What behaviors does that then lead to? Yelling, violence, blaming other people, pointing the finger, escape, I'm out of here, gossiping about people, judging the motives of other people, avoidance, I'm going to avoid people, self-injury. And maybe there's some other things there that you find yourself doing when those tidal waves of emotions hit you. So here's the point. Here's the point of this exercise. We do not have a behavior problem. Okay? We don't have a behavior problem. And we don't have an emotional problem either. In fact, our emotions are working just fine. Here's the problem. We have a desire problem. We have a desire problem. We have a lust problem. Our hearts are lusting after things other than God. We have an idolatry problem. And ultimately, we have this. We have a worship problem because we are seeking satisfaction in broken cisterns. And whenever there is a lust problem, lusting after things that we think will satisfy, there will always also be a fear problem. Because lust and fear is intimately connected. There's a deep connection between lust and fear. So let's have a look at that up on the screen. For example, if we lust after the approval and the praise of man, then we will have a huge corresponding fear of being rejected. So if we're lusting after something, we will always fear the opposite. If we're lusting after the approval of man, we will then have a massive fear of rejection. If we're lusting after money, then we will have this huge fear of not having enough, of want, of poverty. If we're lusting after safety, we'll have this huge fear of suffering. If we're lusting after control, we will fear not having any control. If we're lusting after comfort and pleasure, we will fear losing comfort or pleasure or never having any worldly comfort or pleasure. If we're lusting after getting a spouse, if we're single, then we will also have this fear of always being single, of singleness. If we are lusting after just easy, I want things to be easy, then we will have this huge fear of difficulty. And whenever there is lust, whenever we are lusting after something, that lust will eventually become life-dominating. It will become life-dominating because it will spread out and infect every single area of life to some degree. And that's not the end of the story. Because when we are lusting after something, we'll have a corresponding fear, and those fears will eventually become life-crippling. They will spread out and infect every area of life to some degree. So in light of that, let's jump into this second exercise and get even more specific with our own hearts and our own lives. So I want you to do two things right now, okay? I want you to turn back to the broken cistern sheet and put one finger there, okay? One finger in the broken cistern sheet. And once you've done that, I'd like you to turn to the desire, emotions, behavior sheet and put another finger there. Okay? So one finger in the broken cistern sheet, one finger in the desire, emotions, behavior sheet. And here's what I want you to do. On the lust, fear, connection sheet, you will see that there is a section at the bottom that says lust. Do you see that? Everyone see that? Okay. Here's what I want you to do. On the broken cistern sheet, I want you to take the one or two biggest ones and write it down on this section right here that says lust. Okay? And then I want you to do the same thing from the desire, emotions, behavior sheet. Under desires, pick a one or two that would be the strongest and write it right there in that lust section. Everyone on the same page? Pretty clear? Okay. So this should take us approximately 15 seconds. Okay, so we're going to go. We're going to be counting down from 15. I'll let you know when we're at 10. Okay? Here we go. Here we go. 10. 9. Are we there? 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Are we there? Looks like we're there. Okay, great. So what we should have in this section on the lust and fear connection sheet is we have the section that says lust, and then there should be the 2 or 3 or 1 biggest broken cisterns, and then the 2 or 3 or 1 biggest desires. Do we all have that? Hand up if we got that. Are we ready? Yeah? Okay. Okay, great. Once you have that, I want you to look across the page and you'll see another heading that says corresponding fear. Do you see that? Corresponding fear. And for every lust that you've written down, I'd like you to write out the corresponding fear. And you've got examples above you on that slide. So we have lust, and then we have the corresponding fear. And if you could put your hand up when you've got that finished, that would be super helpful for me. Okay, great, great. Okay, great. Okay. Fantastic. We're moving along quickly. This is great. This is great. Thanks, guys. Okay, so we have our lusts and we have our corresponding fears. Here's what we want to do next. We're going to be moving over to the next page to the actual descent into depression chart. And all you need to do is this. Just take the lust section and plug it in. Just write down the same thing that you just wrote down. And take the fear section and write that down as well. Okay? So this should take us a total of about 10 seconds to do. Here we go. Here we go. We have our lusts written down, and then the corresponding fears. Okay, and then if you could look up when you're done, that'd be fantastic. Great. Okay, that's fantastic. Great. Okay. So here's what we're going to do. We are now going to have a look at this chart, which is called the descent into depression. And we're going to start with what we just wrote. We just wrote lusts and the corresponding fears. Let's work our way down the chart from there. So when we are lusting after something and we can't have it, what does it produce? It produces anger. Okay? That's the next thing on the chart. So when I'm lusting after something, I'm seeking satisfaction somewhere apart from God, and I can't have it, it produces anger. And if I camp out in anger long enough, that eventually is going to look like self-pity. That I deserve what I want, I'm not getting it. And if we camp out in self-pity long enough, eventually that will begin to start looking like depression, that I'll never get what I want. Okay? But let's begin at the top, because the top is the source. And we're going to talk about this again in a few minutes. But it's unbelief. What is unbelief? Unbelief is I don't have my eyes focused on the Lord. I don't have my eyes focused on the Lord. I'm not focusing on who God is and what God has done and what God has promised and what God has commanded. That's unbelief. My eyes are not on the Lord. And so when our eyes are not on the Lord, where will we be looking? Self. And that's what pride is. Pride flows out of unbelief. Because when our eyes are not on the Lord, our eyes will be turned inward on ourselves. And when our eyes are turned inward on ourselves, that's where lust and fears come into play. So unbelief, I am not focusing on the Lord, and then leading to pride, that I'm focused now on myself. When I'm focused on myself, that leads to lusts. Lusts lead to fears. When I can't have what I'm lusting after, then I get angry, and that can lead all the way down to self-pity, depression, and even further into suicidal thoughts. Okay? And so here's where we're going to stop right now. Let's take about 10 minutes to break into our groups and to share what we've learned so far, okay? As it pertains to, here are my broken cisterns, here's how they fit into this descent into depression. And I can see that the ultimate problem here is not my lust, but it's my unbelief, and how that leads to focus on self, which then leads to everything else. So let's take about 10 minutes at this point and talk about this. Let's go ahead and do that now and break into our groups.